Welcome to this recording of our webinar from the Office of Early Learning at the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction on connecting play and early childhood letters. I will be walking you through the content today. My name is Sarah Morrison. I am an early learning consultant in the Office of Early Learning. Glad you could take some time today to listen and learn as part of this session. We're going to discuss information from each unit in early childhood letters and how those key concepts connect to play and early learning pedagogy. For part one, we're going to cover units 1 and 2. For part two, we will cover units 3 and 4. Part two is a separate session, and we will provide information for part two at the end of today's recording. So now we're going to begin to talk about the early literacy foundations that Unit 1 in Letters for Early Childhood covers. This topic does include trends in early childhood education along with early childhood assessment. So, as we begin today, we do want to provide context around the content. Much of the research contained within early childhood letters is literacy research, meaning that it is driven by a focus on literacy skill development only, not a whole child perspective that is often present in early childhood context. We seek to provide an opportunity to demonstrate how literacy skill development and play can merge and align in early learning settings, thus enabling children to build literacy skills while at play and supporting early learning teachers with developmentally appropriate implementation of the available literacy research. Letters EC begins with figure 1.1 on page 3 that you see adapted here on this slide. This is a grounding principle for connecting play and literacy so that we as educators are clear on what early literacy and early reading and writing encompass. During the preschool year, we should be supporting young children with foundational literacy skills. What does that include? Skills like rhyme, syllabication, letter sound connections, sound segmentation, and many others. Research included in Letters for Early Childhood on page 6 conveys that the NELP in 2008 findings confirmed that three foundational areas, oral language, phonological processing, and print knowledge, are strongly predictive of how well children learn to read. It goes on to say that NELP results also confirmed that intentional instruction and guidance are important to facilitate learning in young children. Teaching approaches with targeted practice are more likely to be effective than non-targeted practices. In preschool settings, this translates to the continuum of play. There are times when unstructured free play is appropriate. However, when literacy skill development is the focus, intentional, targeted, and facilitated activities will most fully support young children in their mastery of early literacy. This does not mean that intentional, targeted, and facilitated activities cannot be done within the context of play or in a playful way. Letters Early Childhood doesn't dip into the brain research that supports how children learn to read. However, brain research around early learning has been happening for some time. What the research tells us about brain development during the early years is important because of the connections children are making. Strong brains build strong learners and strong readers, and this happens well before entering preschool. Let's take a look at what's happening in early brain development.
A child's experiences during the earliest years of life have a lasting impact on the architecture of the developing brain. Genes provide the basic blueprint, but experiences shape the process that determines whether a child's brain will provide a strong or weak foundation for all future learning, behavior, and health. During this important period of brain development, billions of brain cells called neurons send electrical signals to communicate with each other. These connections form circuits that become the basic foundation of brain architecture. Circuits and connections proliferate at a rapid pace and are reinforced through repeated use. Our experiences and environment dictate which circuits and connections get more use. Connections that are used more grow stronger and more permanent. Meanwhile, connections that are used less fade away through a normal process called pruning. Well-used circuits create lightning-fast pathways for neural signals to travel across regions of the brain. Simple circuits form first, providing a foundation for more complex circuits to build on later. Through this process, neurons form strong circuits and connections for emotions, motor skills, behavioral control, logic, language, and memory during the early critical period of development. With repeated use, these circuits become more efficient and connect to other areas of the brain more rapidly. While they originate in specific areas of the brain, the circuits are interconnected. You can't have one type of skill without the others to support it. Like building a house, everything is connected, and what comes first forms a foundation for all that comes later.
So, this graphic that you see here comes from the Harvard Center on the Developing Child, as well as that previous video that provides some very insightful information. And this graphic illustrates the point that when children are young, the brain is primed to make billions of connections via neurons and synapses firing in response to stimuli. And we saw that illustrated in that video. As we age, the amount of effort required to reestablish, relearn, or recreate connections in the brain becomes substantially more challenging. And this speaks to why we place so much emphasis on both early learning and early literacy. The early years are when the optimal brain development occurs across all areas. As you heard illustrated there as well, all of those areas are firing at the same time and they all build off of each other. So the younger that we are, the easier it is for our brain to change in response to experiences. So we love this illustration and this graphic from the Center on the Developing Child at Harvard. So, what are your experiences with assessment in early learning settings? Most likely, you have interacted with a few of the assessment types and characteristics that you see here on this slide. We know that comprehensive assessment is essential to the work we do as educators in supporting young children's growth and development. When thinking about assessment, play may not likely have been an obvious consideration. But in the context of early learning settings, developmentally appropriate practice informs the strategies and approaches used. Developmentally appropriate practice supports the use of play throughout early learning environments, and assessment is part of that environment. Thus, play can be used to support assessment and vice versa. So we invite you to pause right here for about a minute, and this is where we want you to jot down your response to a question. How might play and assessment align? Hopefully, you had a moment to pause and think about your response to how play and assessment align. We have a few suggestions that we would like to offer here as well. Play provides authentic and natural opportunities to assess what children know and demonstrate. Play makes assessment invisible for children. Play supports opportunities for independent practice of skills and knowledge, which teachers can utilize to inform assessment. And play supports assessment across multiple domains of development and content areas. This is not to say that there is no place for direct assessment and its associated task. Rather, that play often provides opportunities for children to demonstrate the same assessment task in a way that feels more comfortable and strengths based and less like an on the spot test. So, we ask you to consider the impact of strengths based natural assessment versus on the spot direct assessment for young children. So, you see here, we have a quote for you that we want you to also think about and consider your response to in your Letters Early Childhood Manual on page 25 and in your appendix on page B13. You have an early literacy checklist. And what we'd like for you to do is pause here for several minutes to give yourself an opportunity to review the early literacy checklist and then write down your response to this question. How might these tasks on the early literacy checklist be captured during center time and play for the purpose of assessment? So we hope you had a moment to review the checklist, think about your response to that question of how you can capture information and documentation during play and center time for the purposes of assessment. So, moving beyond the early literacy checklist, What other assessment options do we have connecting literacy and play? Formative assessment is readily available as an option for preschool teachers and other adults working in preschool settings. Formative assessment aligns with DAP and what the research supports for how young children learn best. Formative assessment can allow teachers to invisibly assess children so that their play is uninterrupted while providing information for teachers to use in order to keep skill development and learning moving forward. Play makes formative assessment easier to capture when taken from the lens of allowing children autonomy and self direction over what they choose to engage and participate in, rather than a more formalized assessment with required tasks for completion. Required tasks and assessments may result in children pushing back sometimes on participation or engagement, or possibly not demonstrating the full range of their strengths, given that on demand access of more formal assessments and possibly the interruption of their playtime. Literacy skills, task, and assessment can be embedded into play and center activities, aligning with the idea of both and rather than either or. Teaching Strategies Gold is another option for publicly funded preschool classrooms. Teaching Strategies provides dimensions and progressions that support literacy development and play, as outlined in the information that we just shared about formative assessment. Checkpoints via Teaching Strategies Gold provide teachers with the opportunity to analyze their classroom literacy data based on the dimensions and continue the formative assessment process by adjusting and planning future play and learning experiences. We want what we teach and support in preschool to hold heading into kindergarten, and literacy skills are an essential component of that. So, oral language is the foundation for all literacy skills. If you'll remember, science of reading research tells us that our brains are hardwired to speak, but not to read and write. Oral language development follows a natural progression, and preschool classrooms are often rich environments for supporting the development of oral language. In preschool, we want to build vigorous and powerful fundamentals so that children seamlessly move into the subsequent stages of literacy development when they transition into kindergarten and later grades. Keeping in mind the trends in early education we previously referenced, we are going to use a core piece of the preschool day as a framework throughout the remainder of this webinar: center time. Center time is almost universal to preschool settings in the United States and in licensed settings in North Carolina. It's required for a substantial portion of the day as the primary mode of instruction and engagement. So let's examine how each of our big buckets in literacy that are highlighted in LETRS Early Childhood connect to play. So we have a quick poll, if you will, and we invite you to just think for a moment your response to the question that you see here on the slide is, how might phonology be taught in preschool classrooms? And the response to that is, it can be taught everywhere. All right, that's the response. Is phonology can be taught everywhere in classrooms. And what is phonology? The correct answer is B and C. So a little bit of a tricky question there for us with the way that we pose that. But phonology is the study of the speech sound system and the rule system that governs how phonemes can be sequenced, combined, and pronounced. So, thinking about our center time focus, let's consider how the study of the speech sound system and the rule system that governs it can be taught via play in three focus centers: blocks, art, and dramatic play. Phonology can sound very intimidating as a concept to be taught with 4-year-olds. However, in the context of play and oral language, it is easily achieved with many teachers already teaching and modeling it. Phonology encompasses vowel sounds, consonant sounds, place and manner of articulation, as well as voicing. So, how might teachers and children engage in facilitated and intentional instruction around those concepts? We want to pause here for a minute for you to think this through. And so we'd like for you to think about how phonology concepts could be taught in blocks, art, or dramatic play and play-based learning. So think about how could you teach the study of the speech sound system or that rule system that governs how phonemes can be sequenced, combined, and pronounced. And remember, phonemes are just the smallest unit of sound. So pause for a moment, jot your response down, and then we'll come back. So we hope that you had a moment to consider how you could teach those types of skills throughout play-based learning, particularly in blocks, art, or dramatic play. We would like to share an idea for consideration: the use of a classroom sound wall. Sound walls support the work of phonology at the foundational level. You may have heard of them being used in kindergarten through second grade settings, but they are appropriate for pre K as well. As teachers, we can be intentional about referencing our sound wall while facilitating play in a center. When a child mentions a word during center play, we can intentionally call attention to it and teach while referencing that sound wall. This would make a powerful connection to formative assessment with abundant opportunities for modeling and scaffolding. So, we'd like to share a few examples. Specifically, in the block center, a child is working in blocks and says, "I'm going to make a hospital because my mom works at the hospital." As the teacher, I can call attention to the word hospital by saying hospital is a great word. Hospital begins with the sound, which is a consonant sound. You make that sound way in the back of your mouth when you push your breath and air out of your mouth quietly. Can you try it like me? Hospital. And then you would pause for the child to repeat that. I hear the first sound in hospital is I wonder if we can find the letter H, which makes the sound, so that we can put it beside of the hospital you have built. And you might use some letters that you have in that center to prompt the child to find the letter H and place it next to their structure. An example for using a sound wall in the art center would be possibly a child is using Play Doh in the art center. The teacher joins in and says, "Your creation looks interesting. What can you tell me about it?" And the child replies, "This is my bog." And the teacher asks, "Your dog?" And the child nods her head in agreement. And the teacher follows up by saying, "Your dog is large. Can you say the first sound in dog with me? Dog. D." Let's say it again. Dog. D. When you say the sound for D, D, you have to make that sound with your tongue behind your teeth as you pop the sound out with a puff of air. Try it with me. Dog. D. Look at the picture on our sound wall of how your mouth should look. Now you try on your own. Great job. I'm going to use some Play-Doh to build a dog of my own. And one final example for dramatic play may be that while working in the dramatic play area, a child is observed taking the order of a peer near the kitchen furniture and props. Child A states, "I would like to order some fries." Child B says, "Okay, I'll be right back." The teacher goes over and sits down at the table with child A and says, "I heard you order fries. Fries are delicious, and I love when they are salty and hot." Child A replies, "I like my fries with ketchup too." The teacher says fries starts with the f sound. Can you say that with me? Let's try. Put your hand on your neck while you say the f sound. You shouldn't feel any movement when you say the sound. Now say rise with your hand on your neck. You can feel some movement in your neck when you do it that way. When we say fries, let's practice saying it without any movements in our neck. Try one more time. Fries. Great job saying that first sound in fries without making your neck move. The key here in all of these examples is to be tuned in to what children say and talk more in order to be intentional with infusing literacy instruction explicitly into our interactions and play facilitation. The use of a sound wall to highlight first sounds in words supports children in developing knowledge of articulatory gestures for each beginning sound. This type of intentional literacy work supports what LETRS early childhood tells us about the skills that are most predictive for later literacy success. which are letter names known, and a child's ability to isolate and identify beginning sounds in the words at the end of preschool and the beginning of kindergarten, are the two best predictive indicators of literacy development at the end of second grade and the beginning of third grade. And so, in order to do that during play, as teachers, we have to know what phonology is, what it can look like during play, and intentionally and explicitly call attention to it during centers and play interactions. So this is an example of a sound wall. We also have a resource that we're going to share at the end of this session that includes an example of a sound wall. You can readily Google sound wall and find many examples and options. You do not necessarily need to create a large one. You could create a small one that you just carry around as the teacher to reference, or you could even leave small versions of sound walls in your centers to grab and reference when needed. Again, sound walls support the work of phonology, particularly with articulatory features. So, we want to share a video of phonology work in action in a preschool classroom. And as you watch, we want you to consider how this activity could be modified to be used in a center rather than necessarily sitting around a table. What ideas can you come up with for how you could possibly modify this for use in a center?
Feed me, said the hungry thing. And the children asked,
What do you want to eat?
I want a milk shake.
Milkshake.
Yes, milkshake. When you blend the words milk and shake, you get milkshake. Let's try another one. Feed me, said the hungry thing. And the children asked,
What do you want to eat?
I want popcorn.
Popcorn.
Yes. When you blend pop and corn, you hear the word popcorn. Yes. Feed me, said the hungry thing. And the children asked,
What do you want to eat?
I want a cup.
Cake. Cupcake. Cupcake.
Yes, he's yum, 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 yum. He's eating it all. He ate the cupcake because when you listened and you heard the words cup and cake, and when you blended cup and cake together, you got cupcake. Let's try another one. Feed me, said the hungry thing.
What do you want to eat today?
I want, let's see, I want some cornbread. When you blend the word corn and bread together, you get cornbread. Yes. Man, the last one. Whoops, you still have a milk shake. You have what? Milk shake. Look, milk shake. You get
Milkshake.
what?
Milkshake.
Milkshake. You got it. You can feed him. And look, I see you still have a cupcake. When you blend cup and cake together, you get
Cupcake.
cupcake. You got it.
This is a monster.
And now we have one left. What do you think he's going to ask for next?
Gumdrops.
And what two words do you hear in gumdrops?
Gumdrops.
You hear gum and drops. And then when you blend them together, you get gumdrops. Hey, yum, 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 yum. I do too. They're very sweet.
All right, a fantastic example of phonology work in action, and hopefully you are able to consider and think of some additional ideas for ways that you can incorporate an activity like that into additional centers. So there is more. Oral language is not solely comprised of phonology. It also includes additional layers: semantics, morphology, syntax, and prosody, all of which can and should be taught during the preschool year. Young children are primed for oral language, and we can easily capitalize on this aspect of cognitive development by talking. We need to not only tune in, but talk more and take turns. It truly is that easy. Preschool classrooms are often hubs of oral language and conversation where teachers should intentionally call attention to, model, and scaffold semantics, morphology, syntax, and prosody throughout the instructional day, including during center time play. Semantics is that study of word and phrase meanings and relationships. Think vocabulary. And in the Art Center, it may look like a child is drawing a self portrait, and the teacher joins the child to model vocabulary that is related to the drawing. I see you are sketching a portrait of yourself. What color are your eyes? When we think about morphology, that's that study of meaningful units in a language and how the units are combined in word formation and what that may look like in the dramatic play center. Could sort of sound like a child's playing at the ice cream shop, and the teacher joins the play to highlight the word ice cream by asking the child, "How many words do you hear in ice cream?" What is your favorite flavor of ice cream? Chocolate chip. How many words do you hear in chocolate chip? Yes, two words. Syntax is that system of rules that govern permissible word order in sentences, and it may, in the block center, look like a child building a tower and saying something like, "Wants blocks, big red build I." And the correct sentence structure would be, "I want to build with big red blocks." And the teacher would model this by restating the correct form of the sentence. And we call that recasting. Prosody are those rhythms and patterns of sounds in spoken language. In the dramatic play center, that may look like a pizza restaurant where waiters can take orders using a rhythmic chant. What would you like? What would you like? In an exaggerated Italian accent, and the customer can respond with a playful rhythm. "I'd like pizza, please." So remember, all of these things comprise oral language. Therefore, they can be readily integrated via teacher intentionality and interactions. During the preschool year, children are most often at this metaphonological and discourse stage of oral language development. We have that highlighted in yellow on this slide. We as teachers can capitalize on that during play. An intentional facilitation of narrative development via primitive narratives and chain narratives are referenced in Letters for Early Childhood on page 59, and that can be incorporated into play across any portion of the day. Primitive narratives are those basic stories that children tell with a problem for a person, object, or event, along with an attempt to solve the problem through consequence or resolution. Chain narratives are those that have a beginning plot and they have cause and effect, information, and also information around feelings and intentions. And then circling back to our highlighted centers of blocks, art, and dramatic play from earlier, those are the centers where children are often highly motivated to engage in oral language related to their work and activity. Therefore, opportunities for narrative development should be noticed, highlighted, and taken advantage of by teachers. Tune in, talk more, and take turns is the strategy to support children when authentic opportunities arise during play to build oral language skills through narratives. Teachers will also want to be prepared to initiate narrative development if children are not demonstrating or initiating work on it on their own. Again, tune in and talk more during centers and across the entire day. Intentional interaction is essential to supporting oral language as part of the play. So, play, particularly facilitated and guided play, is what current research is revealing as most effective in instructional environments and scenarios. Given that many preschool classrooms utilize play-based learning for a substantial portion of their day, opportunities to apply strategies that support oral language development are plentiful and should be capitalized upon. Casual talk versus academic talk. During play, you will have opportunities to engage children in both of these types of talk, and you will want to be intentional about doing so. Casual talk is used for social interactions and builds children's experiences with everyday language and knowledge. Academic talk seeks to advance cognitive learning and understanding of the world around us. During play, academic talk could focus on vocabulary and its application to relevant experiences. Consider our focus centers. In blocks, academic talk may include intentional use of words such as construction rather than build, skyscraper rather than building. A discussion around the work of architects and engineers would support academic talk. And in art, academic talk may include noticing the sculpture a child made out of paper scraps and discussing the process they used by infusing words such as mold, form, and chisel. Receptive language. During play, it can look like self talk and parallel talk. During self talk and play, the teacher joins the child and describes what he or she's doing. During parallel talk and play, the teacher joins the child and describes what the child is doing. And that I do, we do, you do strategy is certainly applicable with receptive language during play. Expressive language during play is going to include recast and expansion. Recast are that intentional modeling to support corrections of child language. The teacher will repeat what the child says inaccurately with a correct model. And expansions happen when teachers add more information to the words and sentences that a child expresses. Center time and preschool learning environments are often hubs of this type of engagement between children and teachers. Intentionality and engagement during play are key with this strategy. Show and tell is that timeless activity that provides so many opportunities for oral language growth, and it's primarily used as a whole group activity, but it can easily be utilized during center time as children engage in small group or independent work and they want to share with others. Questioning routines. This is a great strategy during play, but it does require intentionality from the teacher. Research suggests that young children may benefit more from literal talk and questioning during the early years. We can again easily infuse this into play via those three T's, via literal and inferential questioning, via contextual and decontextual talk, remembering that the quality of the interactions we have with our students influences their oral language development alongside the development of many additional skills. In the context of our focus centers, when working with a child or children in dramatic play, we can ask questions that focus on the what, how, and why. So, for example, what are you going to play today? Why do you want to cook? How are you going to let us know what you will be serving? And you can find additional information if you'd like to review all of that on page 72 in your LETRS Early Childhood Manual. So we want you to pause here. That's a lot of information covered on this slide to think about the importance of intentionally applying the strategies you see here into your classroom practice. We also invite you to pause and jot down how you have already been applying these strategies in your classroom practice as well. So hopefully you had a moment to reflect and consider all of the information that has been covered throughout this session. We'd like to invite you to engage in a closing activity called Heads or Tails. And so what we invite you to do is you can choose one question or both questions, but if you will pause right here, reflect and jot down your response. What is a new connection or possibly a confirmation for you around oral language and play based off the information in this session? Or what is a next step for you around literacy assessment and play? Thinking about the content in units 1 and 2 from LETRS Early Childhood and how all of this connects with play. All right, hopefully you had a chance to think, reflect, jot down your thoughts so that you can move your teaching practice forward. And we do have one additional little resource that we would like to share. We have a one-page document, like a little one-pager on connecting play and the science of reading. It is aligned to Early Childhood Letters EC. It is connected to Units 1 and 2 and connected to the content in this webinar. So if you don't want to re-listen to this entire session, please use this QR code, or you can use that short link there to access the document and refer back to some of the content that we have covered today. We thank you for taking time to listen to this session. And of course, if you have any additional questions, you are always welcome to reach out to your early learning consultant out of the Office of Early Learning. Have a great day.